With the looming release of Rings of Power Season 2 and the hype from 2 new trailers, the buzz around this epic return to Middle-earth is hitting a fever pitch. But before we get lost in the anticipation, let's take a step back and dissect Season 1. Did it really deserve all that was said about it? Or was it just a billion-dollar fantasy that failed to deliver? I'm Olu James, and this is Hit or Miss. Now let's get one thing out of the way. Rings of Power Season 1 was a visual spectacle. Amazon didn't just open the wallet for this one. They practically emptied the vaults. With a budget of nearly $1 billion, this was the most expensive TV show ever made, and it showed. The landscapes of Numenor, Khad's Doom, and the Southlands were breathtaking. The costumes were intricate, and the CGI was top tier.
Nice.
It felt like every frame was meticulously crafted to be a visual feast. But here's the problem. No amount of money can hide a narrative miss. On paper, Rings of Power had everything for it. A rich, untapped era of Tolkien's lore, beloved characters like Galadriel and Elrond, and a mysterious villain pulling the strings behind the scenes. But in practice, the story was more tangled than a hobbit's hair after a long night at the Green Dragon. Take Galadriel, for instance. She's supposed to be the show's anchor, a powerful warrior driven by thirst for justice. But instead of the wise, ethereal leader we know from The Lord of the Rings, we got a version of Galadriel that felt flat and one-dimensional. Her quest for Sauron was meant to be the beating heart of the series, but it often came off as more of a meandering trek through Middle-earth than a gripping pursuit. One minute, she's leading a charge against orcs, and the next, she's having philosophical debates that drag on without much payoff. The pacing was so uneven that by the time anything significant happened, most viewers were already mentally checked out. Then there's the subplot with the Halfoots, which despite being charming at first, quickly felt like a filler. The whole stranger falls from the sky plot had potential, but by the season finale, it left more questions than answers. Was this supposed to be Gandalf's great ancestor, an early iteration of Sauron? The show seemed more interested in teasing than actually revealing anything substantial. The political intrigue in Numenor had a similar problem. Great setup, but little follow-through. The tension between the Queen Regent and her advisors could have been a fascinating look at the rise of Sauron's influence, but instead, it felt like a series of disconnected scenes that never quite coalesced into a cohesive narrative. Characters are supposed to be the backbone of any good story, and in a world as rich as Tolkien's, the bar is set really high. Unfortunately, Rings of Power Season 1 felt like it was filled with characters who are more archetypes than fully fleshed out individuals. Elrond, played by Robert Aramayo, was presented as a diplomat, a far cry from the warrior king we'd come to know and expect. His friendship with Durin was one of the few highlights of the season, offering a glimpse of the warmth and humor that the show so desperately needed. But even that relationship felt like it was stretched too thin, with Durin's subplot often sidelined in favor of more ponderous material. Halbrand, a character shrouded in mystery, was meant to be a pivotal figure, potentially even a major player in Sauron's rise. But instead of a nuanced, morally complex anti-hero, we got a character whose motivations were as clear as mud. His arc was supposed to lead to a jaw-dropping reveal, but by the time it happened, most viewers were too exhausted by the show's convoluted plotting to care. And let's not forget Bronwyn and Arondir, whose love story was supposed to bring some much-needed heart to the series. Instead, it felt like a rehash of Aragorn and Arwen's romance, but without the chemistry or stakes. Their battle against the forces of darkness was serviceable, but it never quite reached the epic heights it was aiming for. There's no denying that Rings of Power was a visual treat. The money Amazon spent was all up there on the screen, from the sweeping vistas of Middle-earth to the jaw-dropping CGI of the Balrog and battle scenes. But as stunning as it all was, it often felt like the show was hiding behind its visuals. It's easy to get swept up in the beauty of Numenor's golden shores or the eerie beauty of the Southland, but when the plot and characters don't hold up, it's like putting a shiny bow on an empty box. Take, for instance, the grand reveal of Mordor. The transformation of the Southlands into the Dark Realm was a spectacular moment, but it was marred by the fact that the build-up was so lackluster. It was a twist that should have hit hard, but instead it was more of a well, that's neat moment because the story hadn't earned it. One of the biggest issues with Rings of Power Season 1 was its tonal inconsistency. The show couldn't decide whether it wanted to be a sweeping epic like The Lord of the Rings or gritty character-driven drama. One minute you're immersed in a beautiful poetic exploration of Middle-earth, and the next you're thrown into a clunky action sequence that feels ripped from a different show entirely. The result was a series that felt like it was constantly at odds with itself. The emotional beats didn't land because the show never fully committed to one tone or the other. The stakes never felt real because the characters weren't developed enough to make us care. In trying to be everything to everyone, Rings of Power ended up being a show that didn't fully satisfy anyone. So with all that said, what can we expect from Rings of Power Season 2? The trailer suggests a darker and more intense season with a greater focus on the rise of Sauron and the forging of the titular rings. There's hope that the showrunners have learned from the mistakes of Season 1 and will deliver a tighter, more focused narrative. The potential is still there. Middle-earth is vast and the stories of the Second Age are rich with drama and intrigue. But will Season 2 be a redemption arc or just more of the same? Given the massive investment and the high stakes for Amazon, they can't afford another misfire. Fans are hoping for more depth, more character development, and a plot that actually feels like it's going somewhere. If the show can deliver on these fronts, it might just win back the audience it lost. If not, Rings of Power risks being remembered as a costly experiment that never quite lived up to its promise. Rings of Power Season 1 was in many ways a missed opportunity. It had all the ingredients to be a groundbreaking series, but it was hampered by uneven pacing, underdeveloped characters, and a lack of narrative focus. The visuals were stunning, but without a solid story to back them up, they felt like empty spectacle. However, all is not lost. With Season 2 on the horizon, there's still hope that Rings of Power can turn things around. The trailers hint at a show that's learned from its mistakes, and if the creators can deliver on the promise of a tighter, more compelling story, we might just see a comeback worthy of Middle-earth. So, my final rating for Rings of Power Season 1. Premise 3 out of 5, storyline 2 out of 5, character development 2 out of 5, cinematography and visuals 4 out of 5, tone and style 2 out of 5, for an overall score of 2.5 reels out of 5. It's a show that hovers dangerously close to a miss, but has enough potential that I'm not ready to write it off just yet. Here's hoping Season 2 can forge something truly precious out of the raw materials it has. What do you think? Did Rings of Power Season 1 hit the mark for you, or did it miss the mark completely? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more honest reviews on the latest TV shows and movies. I'm off to wash the car now.